let me click record here, and hopefully the gains and such won't be too high. Who knows? I may get an actual professional podcast kind of thing out of this.
Ooh.
Woohoo! So, um, thanks guys for joining me. Let me introduce myself first, in case this does come out and I can edit something usable, and then get the three of y'all to introduce yourselves, and then we'll go around talking about the new, what you're not calling Eyefinity 3. So, Skip Clark, I'm the owner and founder of the Widescreen Gaming Forum, and probably one of the biggest fans of Eyefinity out on the net. And so we'll put Robert on the spot next since he organized this whole thing.
All right. Well, my name is Robert Halleck, and I do technical communications at AMD. I try to make AMD technologies easier to understand. Okay.
Shane Parfit. I'm now a technology manager in our technical marketing group here at AMD, and my focus is display technologies, such as Eyefinity.
And I'm Anthony Brown. I'm a kernel mode developer. Recently switched to Windows optimization, and I was one of the developers on the mixed resolution feature.
Okay. So this is awesome. I have to say that there are a lot of people that will be very happy about this. It's one of the questions that we always get, and one of the things that we have to always turn people away. They'll say, I've got these three monitors and they're not mixed up, or they want to do a 21:9 in the middle and then two 16:9s on the outside, and they'll say, can I do that? How do I set that up? And until today, apparently, we've had to tell them you can't. And so here's the day that we can tell them they can. So
yeah, absolutely, we're super proud of that.
And from my perspective, and obviously I'm an AMD fan, and the WSGF has a really good relationship with AMD, and I think everybody knows and realizes that. But when we look at what y'all have done in the ecosystem, and we've had a couple of these types of updates or overhauls to what we call the ecosystem. The first thing was Eyefinity with putting three monitors on one video card, and removing the need for something like the triple head to go from Matrox. And then we had the bezel compensation, or bezel management. I forget which one you all call it. Which was something that Matrox had back in the day as well. And then there was the adding of more and more modes and features, such as the 3x1 portrait, then the 5x1 portrait, and then the ability to do various different types of connections on the later cards. You don't have to have a display port in there. You can run off two DVIs and an HDMI. So with all of these enhancements, from my point of view, that make Eyefinity more accessible to the mass market. It's kind of chipping away barrier after barrier after barrier, whether it's the start of removing the $300 box, to removing the need for a DisplayPort monitor, to removing the need for matching monitors for bezel management. But that was matching models of monitors, basically. Now we're at the point now where you're saying we don't have to have matching monitors at all. They can be different resolutions. So who can tell me about how that idea germinated within AMD and how you sort of were able to put it into play?
Okay. Well, why don't I start, I guess. Thanks for, your kind of brief history of Eyefinity there. We do see this as an evolution, and, it's with this new feature, it's pretty evident that, we continue to invest in the technology, and, we're committed to putting out new features, such as this one that we're talking about today. We also invest in the ecosystem with ISVs. We still, test a lot of games, at least all the Gaming Evolved games and many of the Tier 1 titles before they're released, to check for Eyefinity compatibility, and we feed that information back to developers. We think that helps the ecosystem, and we're sure, happy to have the Widescreen Gaming Forum community in on that with all the testing and reporting that you guys have done I think it really helps the gaming ecosystem in general. But yeah, I mean, in terms of how this specific feature came to be about, it's something that we see all the same questions that you do, Skip, about what kind of monitors we can use, and for years we've been recommending 3 identical monitors for the best experience, but we wanted to invest in the technology, stake our leadership claim in multi-display technologies, and provide a way to support monitors with different resolutions and even different sizes. So that's what this feature is all about. It's just kind of us continuing to invest in Eyefinity and adding new features. I assume you have the press deck. Is that right?
I do finally, because y'all forgot about me when y'all sent it out and had the little conference call. And my feelings are hurt, and my feelings can be mended through prompt delivery of a new video card, I'll say. So,
Man,
but
if you drive a hard bargain. No, I'm sorry about that.
that's okay. I do have the deck in front of me, and I'm scrolling through it to familiarize myself with it. I shot out an email to Robert late last night, actually. And so, he responded very quickly and was able to throw this together for us here just the next afternoon. So I'm appreciative of that, but I'm looking here through the deck, and I've been studying the features and the way that y'all are implementing, and have some questions about how it rolls out and how it works.
Okay.
Does anybody want to add anything else, just sort of on the evolution or how we got here?
I think we covered it pretty well.
Okay. So when we look here, there are a couple of ways that you do this. So when I look at the way that it's laid out, there's the people who may have a couple of 1080p monitors and maybe an older 1920 by 1200 monitor, and they could put that 1200 monitor in the middle. Or you may have somebody that has a bigger, say 1440p or 1600p monitor. Maybe they're, a professional photographer or professional video person, and they have their really nice color corrected monitor in the middle and just some lower end monitors on the outside. So when I look how you're putting this together, whether it is, there's fill, which basically fills every monitor. It puts everything it can on every monitor. And then there's fit, where the largest monitor is cut off. It loses a little bit. So if you've got the 1920 by 1200 in the middle and the 1080p's on the outside, you'll lose 120 pixels vertically in the middle. If it's 1600 in the middle and 1080p on the outside, then you'll lose about 520 pixels there in the middle.
Right. Yeah.
If it's inversed and you've got, say the bigger ones on the outside, you would lose there. So that's the fit, where you sort of take the lower common denominator and you put that across, and you end up with some blank spaces, some black spaces, pillar boxing or whatever. You can think of it, like anamorphic there. And then there's the expand, where you fill everything, and you, to the greatest common denominator. My old algebra teacher would tell me that doesn't exist, the highest common denominator. But you fill to the biggest monitor, and then there are spots left over on the smaller monitors that simply aren't rendered and aren't there. And this is something that we saw with like soft TH. So
okay, you can do that with soft TH.
Yeah, you could do that with soft TH. You could do the mixed mode, and it would only do DX9, but you would have kind of these dead spaces and sort of thing of if you had smaller monitors. So
I think you got a pretty good handle on the 3 modes. You want me to fill in my comments on those, or did you have a follow-up question?
No, if you want to fill in some comments, then I have some questions about like implementation and performance and things like that.
Sure. Okay. So I mean you hit it pretty well. I mean, Phil, I would say we view that is really like the legacy mode, right? And we still kind of recommend that for identical monitors. In that mode where we basically historically have forced everything into the same resolution. So I guess we all know kind of the problems with that when you have different sizes and different resolutions of monitors. You force them all to the same resolution, and then there's like a scaler in the monitor that's going to stretch things all kind of different ways, and it can look odd, right? As you're well aware. So that's the fill mode, and I think that the fit and expand is just like you said. I mean, I've talked a lot about this with Anthony, and what they like to call that in developer land is a virtual topology, right? So we're creating a kind of a virtual surface, a rectangular surface, and we're using the attached displays as kind of viewports into that surface, but we hide the actual monitor topology from the OS. Is that a good way to describe it, Anthony?
Yeah, spot on.
So let me ask.
Fit mode or expand modes.
Okay, so let me ask you a question specifically about fit, because I'm looking at an image here, the one that shows the Catalyst Control Center, and it shows the triangle that's used to align it is a little jagged. And looking at another image in the press deck here, it shows how you can align things. Either they're top aligned, they're bottom aligned, or center aligned. If I'm using fill mode, is each panel going to have its own proper aspect ratio? Like if I'm mixing some 16 by 10s and some 16 by 9s, is everything going to be proper on each monitor?
Well, so fill mode is the legacy mode. So that's where we force every monitor to the same resolution.
Okay.
And you get skewing in that mode because it's the monitor scalers that are doing the stretching. So I think you're talking about fit mode.
Okay,
right?
so on fill mode, it is actually taking, like if you have a 1920 by 1200 in the middle and two 1080p's on the outside, on that middle monitor, it's putting a 1080p image on the middle one, but then stretching it accordingly.
I think, yeah. So with two 1080p's, would it default to clone mode for three 1080s? Would it force the three 1080s?
Yeah, each display would be showing a piece of the surface that's 1080p. The native 1080p displays would show that image without any scaling, but the 1200p display would stretch it.
Okay.
In the vertical.
So for those of us here, which would be pretty much all of my readers, or all of my forum members who are anal retentive about aspect ratio, if you have any mismatched aspect ratios, fill is not the way to go.
No, that's the legacy mode. What we're really kind of focusing on, which are the new modes,
Okay.
are the fit and expand for mixed resolutions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it would be safe to say that the new modes would enable the proper aspect ratios to be preserved with an SLS configuration, across multiple mismatched monitors. Is that correct to say?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because if you treat the single large surface as a large rectangle that encompasses the dimensions of all the attached monitors, right? So if you imagine that you have a big monitor in the center and a smaller monitor to the left and to the right, the virtual rectangle that we're drawing around that includes all three displays, and then the monitors are windows into that rectangle. So each monitor is displaying its native resolution, its native aspect ratio, and that's a viewport into the game world.
Okay. So that makes sense to me. And so again, if this makes it out to a real podcast interview kind of thing, I think I'm kind of experiencing it. And again, I joke with y'all about it. I didn't get the briefing and to get these questions answered beforehand. But for a new user who's going into this, who didn't have the benefit of a briefing or a press deck, figuring out what fill versus fit versus expand is going to be kind of a trial and error if you don't have somebody to explain it to you like we're doing here. So
yeah. And I think if you have mismatched monitors, I think most gamers are going to go to the fit mode because that's where you see your entire, gaming field of view without anything being missing. But you'll still be able to, get the right aspect ratio and, minimal stretching and all that kind of stuff. With the expand mode, it's another way to handle it. We give you the choice, but there are parts of the, the surface that are not displayed. So, if you have like a HUD that's there hidden, gamers might not like that, but it might be okay in some games depending on the HUD position. But there's other applications for that.
Well, and so this gets into, I'll give a little plug for the forum. This gets into our grading. So if, for a game to be multi-monitor purely certified, 100% gold medaled, then the HUD has to be optimized for multi-monitor, which generally means you can either position it anywhere you want, any element, like say Lord of the Rings Online, or it's centered on that initial 16:9 or center monitor. So in that expanded world, if you're missing the top or the bottom or a little bit off of both, depending on how you have it aligned, you wouldn't have to worry about that. Right. So in some instances before where we talk about, is a HUD, how much does it impact gameplay, whether it's spanned, as we would say, it's not stretched because everything appears correctly, but it's spanned across all three monitors, or is it centered? Now, if you've got a mismatched group and you're using fit or in particular expanded, where the HUD position is could have a real impact on your ability to play the game or enjoy the game.
Certainly, yeah, the HUD would certainly be rearranged depending on what mode you use. Well, It wouldn't on the fit mode, but it could be on the expand mode.
Right. On the expand mode, where there's elements that are sort of rendered but are invisible or just, hovering out there in nothingness, if there's a HUD element there, you're not going to see it. It's not going to be there.
That is a potential risk, yes, if the software does not, fully take multi-monitor into account.
Okay, and so this gets into one of my other questions when we talk about performance. So if we look at fit, I'm assuming that, if I've got a 1600p in the middle and 1080p is on the outside, that the game is, when that hidden area is cut off in the middle, is the game rendering at 1080p vertically, or is it rendering at 1600p and losing that middle stripe?
Okay. I'll start there, but I'll let Anthony fill in. I mean, basically the game will render at the exposed resolution, right? Without the black bars. So that's the resolution that we expose to the OS, but I'll let Anthony kind of fill in there.
Sure, yeah. There's not a lot more to say, but in fit, in both of these modes, fit and expand, there's two things that we look at. What's the size of the surface, and then what area of the surface is each display showing. So for fit, the size of the surface is going to be whatever by 1080p. So absolutely the game would be rendering in that resolution. And the same goes for expand. The size of the surface, in your example, it would have a vertical height of 1600, so the game would be rendering a full surface at that resolution.
So and I'm looking here at the descriptions again on the chart and looking at the Catalyst image. Fit says it creates an Eyefinity surface that's the best available rectangular area. And then expand says it creates a virtual surface using the desktop as viewpoints on that surface. So if I'm interpreting this right, in reality with expand, you would be driving pixels that you're not seeing, and that would impact your performance. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, I think expand is always going to be a bigger surface than fit, right?
Okay.
And so in that sense, expand will require a little more power.
Okay.
Yeah. To put it another way, if you use fit mode, you're going to render the vertical pixels, only the vertical pixels of the smallest vertical monitor. So if you have 1080p and 1600p, you're only going to be rendering 1080p tall because that's just how tall the smallest monitor is, and then whatever pixels wide. If you're using the expand mode, then you're rendering the vertical resolution of the largest display. And
Right.
yes, that means some off-screen bits on those smaller monitors are going to be rendered and not shown to the user.
So that will be something for our users to take into account. And that wouldn't be such a big deal if you have a 1920 by 1200 in the middle and then 1280s on the outside. But if you do
Right.
have a 1600 in the middle and 1080p's on the outside, if for whatever reason you wanted to do the expand mode, maybe you had some older 1080p's that were 26 or 27 or 28 inch, and you had a newer 27 inch that was the higher res, and physically they were about the same size. You would be getting a hit to your rendering performance for something that you weren't really seeing.
Right, because you would effectively be rendering like 1920 by 1600
Right.
on those side panels.
Yeah, that's right, and that's why we give end users the choice, right?
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that's where it best lies. You give the choices to the people, and you let them choose what's best for them. It's a very libertarian GPU mindset. So
that's kind of how we do. I mean, if you look at the history of the features that we build into our drivers, we have a strong preference for letting the user decide what's best for them, when at all possible.
And I like that, and I think our users like that as well, because we're, at least in our forums, we have the early adopters, the tinkers, the modders, and the people that want to push it to its limits. And comes with that is people that want their hardware to do exactly what they want. Damn it. And so I think that falls well in line there.
Yeah. Well, they're definitely the target market, and they've always been appreciative of the features we've added in the past. So
So I'll touch with one more point on the setting up of the Eyefinity of the mixed resolution, and that is the alignment. So that hasn't been a problem in the past with 3 identical monitors. You aligned them, the top, the bottom, and the middle were all at the same point. They were all aligned at the same time. Does anybody want to talk about the new alignment features for top, middle, or bottom?
Sure. And more, I will say. So, yeah, this is mostly for monitors which are of different size, as you suggested. As you can see, kind of in the picture there, which I hope you'll display on the website for people.
If this goes well, it would be a YouTube video with graphical helpers.
Perfect. So yeah, I mean, we chose these preset alignments as kind of a shortcut to make it easier for most users. We kind of figured out by looking at various forums that most people align their monitors with one of these 3 layouts, either kind of all uniform on the bottom, all uniform on the top, or directly to the middle. We've seen a lot of forums with people posting their multi-monitor setups. We saw a lot of mismatched monitors. And so this is the shortcut. So when you're walking through the setup wizard, we first give you the option to select one of these shortcuts to make it quicker. We can support different alignments. For example, where maybe the one on the left is a different alignment with the one on the right, or they're like an inch out on one side and 2 inches out on the other side, or top alignment on the other side. So if you elect not to select one of these current alignments, we have a fine-tune adjustment, which is kind of indicated by that smaller window on the same slide. It's a little bit hard to see, but what happens is when you go into that fine-tune alignment, we put these yellow and gray markers across the bezels, and you can what the end user will do is whatever their alignment is, say they're mismatched in height, you can use that control to just move those yellow markers so that they're in alignment across the bezel. And then when you finish that procedure, the surface will be built across the misaligned monitors. Maybe Anthony can add some more color to that part.
Sure. Yeah. Even it might be worth mentioning, even identical monitors, we allow you to misalign a little bit with this new UI. where we kind of give you a guideline and then ask the user to tell us about the physical position of the displays on their desk. But this whole new Eyefinity setup wizard is kind of geared like that. We know what monitors the user has attached, but we have no idea what they're doing with them on their desk. So through all the steps of the wizard, like choosing your displays and choosing the arrangement, the alignment, the whole idea is for the driver to kind of learn more and more about the physical arrangement and layout of these monitors. So with the alignment, it's very easy for the user to use the UI to hit the up and down arrow per display and basically inform the driver about what they're physically looking at. And then we have the shortcuts top, middle, and bottom if they don't want to go into the heavy duty work of custom aligning each monitor.
So you talked about the fine tuning or an inch or two here. How off can you get? How far out can you push monitors out?
I think with the Radeon cards, we do it 10% of the largest height of the monitor.
Okay.
The largest monitor's height. So that's the maximum initial
So if you have a 1600p display, your maximum surface size would be 1760.
Okay.
So you can miss the line a little bit up to that threshold.
I've got one use case, and I don't know if this is the one y'all thought of, but what you're doing here makes it interesting and feasible. We've seen in the past with some of the older flight sim titles that would allow really crazy configuration of monitors. And one of the things that people have done in the past is, some of the flight sims offer dual monitor capabilities so that you could have one monitor for your front view and one monitor, say, for your avionics, your control panel. Could somebody now, and if I'm putting you on the spot and you don't know the answer, you can just get back to me. Could somebody now, say, take an ultra wide monitor at 21 by 9 and then a single 16 by 9 and do them in a 2/1 so that you have the 21 by 9 on the top and the 16 by 9 on the bottom with the mismatch mode, so that the 21 by 9 gave you the viewport of the plane out the windows, and then that 16 by 9 below it gave you the view of the instrument panel all the way down to, say, the joystick?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds possible. I just don't know. Like, we do rectangular surfaces. That's the only concern, and I don't know what kind of surface that flight sim is trying to render to, or if it renders to two separate surfaces, or if it's trying to make a single surface. But I think the key point to make is that we do make rectangular surfaces, and you can do those, vertical 2x1 type arrangements with mismatched displays with this feature. But I'm not sure how the game.
So beyond a particular game, let's say, you could do a vertical configuration of a 2/1 or even a 3/1. A couple of the big games out right now are like MechWarrior Online and Hawken in the mech universe. So somebody could potentially, and I'm just talking about your driver, not how the game is implemented, but somebody could do a 16 by 9, a 21 by 9, then a 16 by 9 and a vertical, and the mismatch would work just fine there as well.
Yes. Yeah, so that's another point to make that's not in the slides. The pro tips for your users, I guess, or your community. So this feature is limited to n by 1 and 1 by n configurations.
Okay.
So I mean, when we started getting into supporting 2 by 2 or 3 by 2 or any thing other than 1 by n or n by 1. The scope got pretty big, so we thought that the kind of sweet spot, especially for gamers, is the 1 by n, the n by 1 type cases.
Okay.
That's what we're supporting.
Well, and that would certainly, that certainly opens up some new possibilities. We've all been really limited on a single plane, and you could do theoretically some things of a T or a cross configuration if that fit the viewport really in some of the simulation things like racing or mech or flight or whatever. Um, and I mean, those are probably some of the most hardcore gamers out there with regards to
Mhm.
what they'll tinker with and put into. So I would say that the fact that you're not looking at just a horizontal, but also a horizontal. I think I made a new word. Um,
Yeah,
the,
we can do horizontal and we can do vertical, but a T type configuration is, I believe, not supported in this. It's not really an N by 1 or a 1 by N.
Yeah, a 21 by 9 and a 4 by 3 and a 4 by 3. I guess you can.
That kind of looks like a T.
right. That's what I was meaning by a T. You would have like a 21
Okay.
by 9 over a 4 by 3 or 21 by 9 over a 16
Right.
by 9.
Right.
Yeah,
It's
you
a
could do that
fat
'cause
T,
you're limited to too tall, right?
too tall.
Two monitors tall.
But can
Yeah.
you do
But I think
three?
one of the use cases that we really, and I think we put it in this slide deck, I think one that's really interesting, and I know you're a fan of those 21 by 9 monitors, but having one of the 29-inch 21 by 9 monitors, and on the side, I think it's a 23-inch 1080p, which is the same DPI and lines up perfectly. That's a really interesting use case for kind of an extra wide 3x1 Eyefinity, right?
I know you're a bastard. You're gonna make me tear up my desk. Because I'm looking, so I have one of the 21 by 9 29-inch panels, and it's actually the 21 and a half or 22 inch that's almost the exact same vertical height, at least the ones that I have from the manufacturer who shall not be named, um, because we don't support display manufacturers around here. But I'm looking at it now going, okay, because right now I'm doing 3/1. I've got my 3 16 by 9s over my 21 by 9. I'm thinking, wow, I can just do the 21 by 9 in the middle, then the others on the outside, and
Yeah.
totally flip it around. So
Yeah,
yeah,
well, I'm pretty excited to see what you and your community comes up with in terms of display arrangements.
I know.
I'm
So
sure.
I just moved into a new house. I just got my desk set up. So thank you for making me tear it all apart.
You're
So,
welcome.
so I've heard some rumblings, and by rumblings I meant that I emailed Robert and he said no dice. So I'll go ahead and bring it out here. Um, the other big configuration that people always clamor for is the PLP, the Portrait Landscape Portrait. And so I'm
Mhm.
hearing that that will not work. Is that true?
Yeah, that's true. So I mean, this is an evolution, but we're not quite there yet. So the display controllers, I guess Robert has probably told you, the display controllers in the current parts do not support the PLP features that we need.
So does he didn't
So,
get that detailed, so does that mean the next generation cards will? Is that what you're telling me?
well, I can't comment on that. You can probably guess.
But as you're saying, it's an iterative process and we're a step closer.
I think it's fair to say that.
Okay. So we'll let people read between the lines and save their pennies for whatever. But yeah, I mean, there's certainly some very interesting ideas here with, 1920 by 1200 in the middle, flanked by 4 by 3s. There are still some hardcore people out there that want um, the the extra vertical on a 1200. With some of the new 21 by 9s that are out. I don't have one yet. I'm hoping to get a hold of one soon. Linus from Linus Tech Tips just did a review on the 35-inch 21 by 9. That's the 3440 by 1440.
Yeah,
And
I'm interested.
I don't know if you saw his tagline. It was a week after he reviewed, or 2 weeks after he reviewed the Samsung 60-inch panel that he raved about. That was, only about a $600 panel that I got one of. Still haven't taken it out of the box yet. My life sucks. And Shane, I think you had said you had some coming in as well. But a week after that, his answer was 4K is dead to me.
Oh,
That
wow.
that the physical size of 35 inches, the aspect ratio, and the pixel density was the holy grail, which actually, and people can go back and see, is what I've been proclaiming and saying would happen for years. We would get a point where we'd get a big enough, high enough res 21 by 9 that um, hit those 3 points, because the 5 by 1 portrait, and I ran that for a while, physically is big, has a lot of pixels and it requires a ton of horsepower, but you do end up with a lot of bezels. But it's about the
Yeah.
same aspect ratio as 21:9. It's really close.
Is the 34-inch 3440 by 1440, is that the same height as the 27-inch 2560 by 1440?
That
That would be
you see where I'm going. So now you've
yeah.
got the same, that 35-inch 3440 by 1440 is physically the same height within spitting distance of the 27-inch 1440p panels. So
Yeah.
if you've got the
That sounds like
horsepower,
a killer use case.
right, there's
Yeah.
your killer use case right there.
Yeah. Anthony just said he wants to see that. I concur.
If anybody wants to throw cash my way, if there's any, you know, independently rich people that would listen to this, throw cash my way and I'll make it happen.
Yeah.
So I think it would be safe to say that Eyefinity currently stands alone in being able to support that type of config. Is that right?
Yes.
And I will second that because we've had some people on the forum asking to just do dual monitor setups on the green side, and their technology requires 3. N must equal 3. You can't do 5.
We've supported 2 for a very long time. So.
Right.
We have a much more flexible solution, I would say. I think going the other direction on the bottom end for like something that's really low cost. There's one other setup that we hooked up here, which was a 23-inch 1080p monitor, and then on the sides we have these really cheap and old 17-inch 1280 by 1024. And the setup a really kind of low cost, smaller setup, but you had with sit mode, you just lose like something like 56 lines on the bottom of the 1080p, so a really small black bar, but it set up a really nice display group, and something like that would be like super low cost for like an entry level Eyefinity system, right?
Right. And
so
for somebody,
kind of support that killer use case and anything like really ghetto on the bottom end, right?
well, and I mean, and when you're looking at it, I mean, and that even kind of gets us into a conversation about the APUs. I've done testing with the A10 APUs that I've been too busy to get the article up on. I mean, they fly through 1080p. I mean, they fly through 1080p. They'll fly through 1920 by 1080p. I built a Steam box for sort of the Lego games and Rayman and sort of the games my kids would play, but I also tested with BioShock and Tomb Raider and different stuff, and you could get 30, 60 frames a second in that range on like medium settings. So it may not be too long with, now with an APU or in the next gen with, Eyefinity support, plugging in one good monitor, one new one, and a couple of old ones that you can, even the low to mid tier machines can creep into Eyefinity. And it's really the ability to bring in older dormant hardware that somebody may have sitting around, and increase that immersion, get that peripheral effect there.
Yeah, exactly. We were definitely thinking about the people who have extra monitors laying around when we're conceiving this feature, right? And I will say that in terms of APU support, Anthony confirmed for me the other day that our Kaveri APUs do support this feature.
Okay.
So that's the very latest APUs that we just released this year.
Right. That's the
so that by extension would include Kabini, Tamash, Bima, Mullins as well.
I'm not sure Kabini supported, and I'm not sure how useful it is. I mean, there's 2 display types in those low power APUs.
Okay, so 2 displays max
at that point. But Kaveri has at least 3 display types, so it can do a 3 by 1. Oh, sorry, it's got up to 4 displays for Kaveri.
Well, that
I'm actually one of the. I'm sorry, Skip. Go ahead.
Well, no, as I say that, I mean that certainly is. I mean, it's good news for today and for tomorrow.
Absolutely.
So I had one more Eyefinity thing here. There's a new offer in the third major update. What shall not be called Eyefinity 3 is the one-click setup. So can somebody talk to me about what that is and what that does and what it does and what it doesn't do?
Sure. This is kind of one of those things, why didn't we have it in the first place? But we're really happy to have it now. This feature, it will detect the layout of your extended monitors. I mean, most people, when they first set up their displays, their multi-display, they, set them up extended and, arrange them, how they are on their desk. And it's very easy to do that, either in the Windows interface or Catalyst Control Center. So what this feature is, when you go to create Eyefinity display group, the first panel you're presented with an option to use the current arrangements, and that will just detect your extended desktop layout in their current positions. And if you select that option and hit next, it'll basically build that display really quickly for you automatically with the default settings and get you up and running quicker than ever before.
So does it do anything with bezel correction, attempt to do that?
No, it doesn't. The OS has no concept of display bezels, and this is a direct translation from, your extended desktop into an equivalent Eyefinity setup.
So I think for the fourth generation, AMD needs to build a database of monitor EDIDs and the millimeters of the bezels, so that you can just do that all automatically for us too. I know it would be a maintenance nightmare, but it's what the people want.
Cool, interesting idea. You've always got the good ideas.
That was where the laughter was supposed to come in, as if in to say go away. But
I was smirking. Does that count?
that it does. It was the silent laughter. It was the thing that didn't even deserve a full laugh. So I would see this as somebody for a new user who hasn't done this before would help.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so again, looking at bringing new people into the ecosystem, whether it's people who can utilize old hardware, not having to buy 3 newer monitors or 3 matching monitors, somebody who's newer to the setup, the one click would get them going. And I do see there that in the window you do offer the where it says supported configurations for your display group, standard, mixed dimension, mixed alignment. So even with one click, does one click take into account the mixed mode aspects?
Yeah, it does. But we'll always try and create the fit SLS Eyefinity layout mode by default. If we can't make fit, then we'll go to fit.
Okay.
So if your monitors happen to be set up in an extended desktop layout that defines, not a perfect rectangle, then you'll get that cropped mode that we've been calling fit.
Okay. So I want to thank you guys for your time today. You certainly helped in educating me. One last thing, and this has actually been a topic. We've started a podcast on the show. 2 of my guys, Peanut and the Destroyer, have started a WSGF News podcast. And one of the things that's come up repeatedly is Linux gaming, SteamOS and the Steambox. Both of those guys are pretty big Linux nerds. But over the last month or two, we've seen some really big announcements of different engines and different games being ported to Linux, whether it was the Crytek engine or the Unreal engine or the work that Valve did, with its Source engine, and then it's a DirectX to OpenGL sort of on-the-fly converter. So with the move to, with these advancements and with Valve's own push into the world of Linux with the Steambox and SteamOS, at least for my guys, again, a subset of them at least, Linux is top of mind. It's a way to get a cheaper box, a cheaper gaming experience. And I see here in the press deck, the last slide is AMD Catalyst 14.6 beta Linux improvements. So can y'all take a moment to chat about that, about what AMD is doing with Linux in general, how you're helping or improving that support, and what it means to either just single panel SteamOS Linux users and what it means to more power gamers, for lack of a better phrase, that might have an Eyefinity setup.
I can tackle that one, actually.
Okay.
Well, I think one of the key points to make is that we do Linux and Windows driver development in parallel. So we have dedicated teams to both. which is why we're able to release drivers at the same time. So, we look at the features that we're bringing to bear, and it is a goal of ours to make sure that we're at feature parity. I think specifically for gaming in this driver, or just users in general, one of the things we did is make installation easier, automatically identifying what dependencies are required, then obtaining them for the user, building up an installable package, and then proceeding, right? And that takes a lot of the guesswork and the busy work out of installing a graphics driver. And so those are kind of specific quality of life improvements that we can make for Linux, that we're continuing to make for Linux, that are unique from Windows. And then on SteamOS, we're already seeing Steam machines come out that feature AMD hardware. The Linux 3.11 and 3.12 kernels have received some pretty significant contributions from AMD to help enhance the performance, reliability, and feature set of Radeon graphics cards. So, on a whole, we kind of exist as a company in service to game developers and gamers. And those game developers and gamers are now looking at Linux more than ever, which means we are definitely following along. And we go where you go.
Well, that is certainly good to hear. And I myself, I'm not the biggest Linux nerd in the world. I'm more of the Mac nerd in the organization. But I know that there are a lot of people in our team, and a lot of the people that are active, that appreciate the Linux support and the focus on Linux as we go forward. And you have a big player like Valve, who their push into Linux and SteamOS can maybe help re-democratize some of the gaming out there. So, but we can't do that without the support of the hardware companies providing the drivers and getting the performance up to snuff.
You are absolutely right.
So we've been rambling on here, mostly me rambling, for about 50 minutes, so the better part of an hour. Do y'all have anything y'all want to add in closing? I will just say, again, thank you for this opportunity to interview you guys. Thanks for your continued support of the marketplace and the user, to bring more people into Eyefinity, and to give those of us who are already steeped in it more options. So, any closing comments?
Yeah, for me, thanks a lot for the opportunity, Skip. We hope you guys enjoy it, and just let us know if you have any follow-up questions.
I'm sure we'll have
questions from my end.
I'm sure we'll have questions and suggestions. Don't you worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So from my end, I just wanted to say that the Catalyst 14.6 beta that includes all of these new Eyefinity features is now available on our website. Posted a couple hours ago. So if you're interested, go grab it.
Well, again, thank you, gentlemen, all, for getting together, especially on short notice. Again, thank you for your support, and maybe we can roundtable again like this sometime soon.
I think we can. Thanks, Skip.
Thank you.
Thanks, Skip.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.